What's up, everybody? Welcome to Only Plants. Today, I am going to talk to you about the way I use iNaturalist. So, there's probably a lot of ways that people can use iNaturalist out there. I'm going to show you some of my methods and what I use it for botany and stuff like that. So, if you're not familiar with iNaturalist, iNaturalist is a app that you can download onto Android or iPhone. And so, when you're in the field, you can take good photos, upload them, and then it will suggest an identification for that particular organism based on your location, what's been seen around there before. And then when you upload it, it's going to basically, like the blockchain, get approved and agreed with by another community member. And then that particular observation is going to get a research grade observation. So that means that somebody else agrees with you that that is the plant or organism that you said it was. And then that's how there's a lot of really good research information embedded within iNaturalist. You just sort of have to know how to navigate around the website and find the information there. Until recently, in September, the app has been updated. There's a new app for iNaturalist called iNaturalist Next. And it's basically this right here is the online desktop version. And it's always been a lot better. You can search, there's search functions, you can filter things, look at your own observations, see where you've been, look at your life list. And now the app is also like that. So previously it wasn't, they were basically like two separate applications, and now they're sort of combined into one. But I'm going to show you the online version today because it's easier to record that way and show you some of the things that I do here. So up until recently, all of our plants and stuff were in a book. Oh, this is green screen, so you can't see it. But it's a Gleason and Cronquist from the 60s. So it was the whole Eastern Seaboard, a flora for the whole Eastern Seaboard. And now it's sort of been broken out into different regions. So there's a New England flora, a Virginia flora, stuff like that. But iNaturalist is really interesting because it's sort of like a whole amalgamation of all the species in the world, and you can see where species lines get drawn in terms of range maps and stuff like that. And the other benefit of it is it's all in real time. So it's up to date, as of today, somebody was uploading something somewhere across the world, and you can see those observations. So, when you take photos, you want to make sure you're taking at least four good photos. So any plant can be identified if it's in flower. There are a lot of species that need to be in flower in order for you to actually identify them. But if you see plants in flower, taking a picture of the flower, a picture of the stem, a picture of the leaf, and then a picture of the plant in its habitat is really helpful for anyone else who's going to verify that observation, that you've made to verify that it is that species that you saw. And so a lot of these, I'll show you, this is my actual iNaturalist dashboard. And so these are all my observations here. And as you scroll in, you can see that some of them are actual pins and some of them are these like dots with, just a dot with a circle around it. And so those are actually obscured observations. And obscured just means, so this is for the showy orchis, which is a rare plant in Vermont. So it's not actually at this location, but iNaturalist automatically does this for you for any rare, threatened, or endangered species. I tend to obscure a lot of my data only because I don't necessarily want people to know where I've been. And I do all of my uploading on the phone. So I upload them in real time as I see them, and I don't do a download afterwards. I just upload them from the phone. There's an option there where it says suggest identification. If I know what it is, I usually choose the right one. It's most of the time pretty accurate. It's at the top. But, something that you don't necessarily know, you may have to look through a couple different species and then choose one and hope that somebody comes in and gives it that research grade level of observation that you see here. So let's just look at this one while we're here. I'll show you. And so here's the actual photo I took. So I took a picture of the photo, a picture of the plant in bloom. The flowers weren't quite open yet. And then I took a picture of the plant in habitat. Now, luckily, these plants are pretty easy to ID because it's an orchid, and there's not a lot of other things that look like this. But if you were doing something for a grass or, an aster maybe, a Symphyotrichum, those could be really hard to ID without a key. So there is no key in iNaturalist. You have to sort of like use keys that you have available in other places, like Go Botany, which is from Native Plant Trust, or FloraQuest if you're in the northern tier of that, or the Carolinas. Those are two good apps that you can get and you can use them offline. So, IDing some plants, then cross-referencing with an iNaturalist observation is a really useful way to do that. And another, just to get you oriented here, so these are all my observations, and then there's identify, and so you can actually go into identify and look at other observations and identify them for people. And then my favorite one is the explore function. So I'll show you this explore function is really great if you know how to use it. And so it basically automatically puts me in the United States. Now, if you scroll into this, there's, millions of observations here. But you know what? So yeah, so there's almost a billion observations. What I really want to pay attention to is plants. So I go into the kingdom version of this. And if I was traveling somewhere like, I'm gonna go down to Groton, Connecticut this summer to do some work. And so let's just look at Groton. I'm looking at just the plant kingdom. So I want to see what species are here. It's going to tell me that there's over 1,000 plant species in Groton. I can click on that, and then I can scroll through and see sort of like what types of plants in particular I would see in this region. And so that's really helpful for me at just going into somewhere I know basically what I'm going to see. And if you back up, so I was looking at Groton entirely. If I wanted to go right into a location and see, something for a particular place, I can actually bound. So these features right here, let's say I was just going to go to this location. I'm going to bound that. It's going to cut out everything else. And now I'm looking at 21 species in this location. And so now I know that when I head here, these are the plants that I'm particularly going to see in this part of Connecticut. So let's go back, and what else I want to say? So another useful thing, when you go back to your observations, which is it's filtering for only your stuff. If I say I want to know where I saw any Carrick species in all of my travel, so my life list, I can zoom in, and I've seen 78 species of Carex, mostly in New England. This is the distribution of all of that genera throughout New England where I've seen them. And then if I want to look at any particular one, it's going to pull up all of my observations only. So I've seen 8 observations of Carex folliculata, 8 observations of Carex stricta, so I can go through and look and see which plants I've seen where, as well as phenology. So phenology is really important for, hunting plants. When you're going out to see something, you want to be able to see it when it's in an identifiable form. And so if you click on the species, so this brings up the whole species page, it's going to tell me who the top observer was. So somebody has seen this plant 65 times, when the last observation of it was, who the leader as the top identifier is. And then it's going to come down here and it's going to give me, I can see when somebody saw flowers and fruit. So the only problem with this is that it's the species across its range. So this is the range of the plant entirely where it's been seen. So this plant in particular, if I found, the phenology information for this might actually be pretty good. And for my region anyway. And when you go in here, I can see that I know that Carex, I need it in mature fruit to be able to identify it. And so this in June, these plants were both, most plants, 16 of them were seen in either fruit or seed. And if you go backwards, so May, June, July is still a decent time to go see them, maybe August. There's a lot of unannotated observations in here. So, somebody would have to go through and annotate those to say that they saw fruits or flowers on them at a particular time. But this gives me a window, right? So now I know that I'm going to be looking for this plant in June sometime in order to be able to identify Carex flava in at the right time. And let's see. So the research grade is really good. I mean, I get a lot of my stuff gets bumped up to research grade And so if you're looking for something in particular, like if we're going to go to the explore feature, I don't want to see everything. Let's just look at Carex flava again. I don't want to see anything that hasn't been verified by somebody else. So I can go into my filters tab and I can just click on research grade, which will eliminate everything that's not research grade and been identified definitely as this species, so that I know if I'm looking at plants, I want to know what the flowers or fruits or stem or leaves look like. I can go in here and make sure that I'm actually looking at the plant that I need to be finding somewhere or I want to be finding somewhere. And then I get another distribution map of where all those research grade observations have been from. And the best way to be able to get a research grade observation is to put plant photos into your observation that somebody can also identify them from. For instance, this one, is a single photo. There's no measurements or anything in here. So I wouldn't be able to say that this is definitely Carex flava, although it does look like it. And the top identifier has identified it as that. There are two other species, Cryptolepis and Virigula, which also look very similar to this. So without any sort of measuring implements in there, it's hard to tell that for sure. But I'll give you an example of the photos that I put in that show measurements. Crypto. Here we go. Okay. See, hopefully yeah. So I've got pictures of the Periginia in here. And iNaturalist will let you upload more than just four plants. But here's a measurement of the Periginia. So, part of the differentiation between this species and the other ones are how long, how wide Periginia are, and if they're reflexed at the top. So, these ones look pretty straight. I'm pretty sure that this is Cryptolepis, although nobody has verified that for me, and I'm probably going to have to go back during the regular growing season and see what color they are during that time. But they were found in has a smooth beak. I'm writing in here too why I think it's that species. So they're under 4 millimeters, smooth beak, much smaller than Flava visually, growing in an acidic fen or wetland, and Flava usually grows in richer wetlands. So there are, things that point to this actually being the species. As far as getting verification, I haven't yet, but it is helpful to include measurements so that somebody who's out there that wants to verify that for you can do that. Also, some things that I use this for are like looking for rare plants. And what I'll do sometimes is I'll go in and look at the Explore feature again. So I'm looking at all of North America. I'm going to type in Collinsonia canadensis, which is a rare plant threatened in Vermont. I previously did some research on this, trying to find new populations in Vermont to see if it actually was rare or not. Interestingly, it is not rare in Massachusetts, so it's listed as an S4 plant, so that's thought to be pretty secure. And, plants don't know boundaries, so it was surprising to me that it wouldn't be a common occurrence of this species in southern Vermont. And so I started looking at these maps. I came down and looked at this particular observation here, which is research grade. It's in Franklin County, which is very close to the Vermont line. And when I look at this, I can tell that this is the Green River that heads up. It flows from Vermont into Massachusetts. But the Green River comes up in here and eventually crosses over the state line. Now, I thought that because these were hydrologically connected, I would be able to find this particular rare species in Windham County, which is the southeasternmost county in Vermont. And oddly enough, I did find it. So that is a good way if you know what species are rare in your state and they happen to not be st rare in another state that borders you. iNaturalist can help you pinpoint where those rare plants might be occurring based on their current distribution, because iNaturalist is not obscuring this for Massachusetts, although it will obscure it for Vermont based on the state ranked listings for these species. Another one, so further on this, it's like I really like Collinsonia. I want to see how many species of Collinsonia exist in North America. And so what'll happen is when you use that search feature again, you can actually see all across. So they're primarily located on the eastern part of the state, or the eastern part of the country. There's four species total. And so Collinsonia canadensis is by far the most common, although this verticillata, aniseta, and punctata are all also Collinsonia plants that occur in different areas. So when you get to this screen where it tells you what species they are, you can go into what observations, the observations of just this species, and you can see what their distribution's like. And so this particular Collinsonia species is only found very restricted to North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, and Tennessee, with some interesting, these might be interesting to look at. Maybe they're captive or a disjunct population, but you can see that they're split by the mountains here. So this is the Blue Ridge Mountains in here, split on either side of that, which is kind of cool. But so that gives you some insight into the biodiversity of a particular genus. If you just want to search for the genus itself, iNaturalist will let you do that. And some other ones that I find really interesting are things like Trichostoma, which is forked blue curls. In New England, we only have one or two species, but when you look at this, and I think one of those species has actually been moved to a different genus now. But when you look at the species of this in North America, there's 24 of them and some really cool looking ones. And the interesting thing that I didn't know about this until I started looking at Trichostoma, but Florida has a really interesting, like, they almost have species that are only grouped into certain sections of Florida. And so when you go back here, and you look at like, let's look at this one. That one was in like Central Florida. This one is probably in Florida as well. Okay, so this one's a South Carolina, North Carolina coastal species. And let's see this one. Yeah, here's another one that's just restricted to Florida. And this one, so that one, the other one was like in here somewhere near Tampa. This one is restricted to the very center part of Florida. So it's really interesting to be able to have all of this data at your fingertips and you can sort of pick and choose what you want to see and where those plants show up. I'm going to show you another one that I found. It hadn't been recorded in New England before. I ran into it. I think it's bog bulrush. You can also search common names in this. Yeah, Chenoplectinella mucronata. So my observation of this was on the coast of Connecticut, the Long Island Sound. And when I found this, it wasn't in our flora, so I couldn't really key it out. I had to sort of like find out, where these plants were occurring and how how close they were to me. So I ID'd it to a species and then went back out and found I wanted to see where these plants were showing up otherwise. So outside of New England, how close was the next nearest population of this? And you actually see that they occur on Long Island. So it's a non-native plant. I forget, it's probably from Europe or Africa or something. But you can see the distribution of this. So this is a plant that I would guess is moving, north into Connecticut. And because that's the first observation on a naturalist of this in New England, it's probably a non-native that has potential to become invasive. And here's my observation of it here. It's been research grade verified, and there you go. So it's introduced to New Haven, arrived in the region via anthropogenic means. Gives me my location. Now in here, this is your little dashboard for your observation, and it says if it's obscured or not. So you can make edits to this, you can obscure data, but you should always be able to see your particular information and where that pinpoint is for your species, even if it is obscured. So that's very cool. And let's see. Yeah, so I hope this is just a brief introduction to like the cool things that you can do with this platform and see different species, learn a lot about plants and other organisms. I don't really use this a whole lot for anything but plants and, keeping a life list. And then, of course, doing research and having the community here to talk about plants, identify them, help you identify them. So it's all really good. So if you don't have iNaturalist already, I encourage you to get out there and get the app, start taking photos, good photos in the woods, and then start uploading data to this and start learning more about plants in your area. Thanks for watching.